Hey guys, welcome back to Renos by BB and Babu. Thank you for coming back and tuning in. In this episode, we're going to go through the criteria for the different homes that we looked at, the pros and cons of why we chose the home and decided not to go with it, whether that was because we didn't offer enough, we lost out or whatnot, and just the different things that we were looking for in a home.
So the other part is the criteria, and I kind of alluded to it in the last episode, but just to recap, what we did is we started with a couple things. The first thing is we didn't want to put ourselves in positions, given what we know the climate will go through, like hurricanes and others. So we wanted to make sure the houses that we looked at were not going to flood. So we sort of took the flood maps for the city, and not just recent. We went back, very long time, like 100 years, and sort of pulled up those maps and looked. So that was one criteria to make sure it hadn't been in a flood area before. The other thing is we wanted close proximity to shops and to other attraction areas because we wanted it to be sort of something we held in the family for a while. That was the intent. And then when we actually looked at the home, what we were looking for was we wanted something that had at least 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. That was sort of the minimum. Probably somewhere at least over 1,500 square feet, because we knew we wanted to have other folks over. It wasn't just for the two of us. So we wanted to make sure we had that kind of space. Now, I put some of my own stipulations, which was I like to work in the yard and I want to have a place to work on things and cars and whatnot. So I was pushing for a parking space because I do not want to show up and have to find a spot on the street. And we've lived in the city, and that's something I just kind of get tired of. And so I'd like to know there's a spot. So if we fly in, there's a place for us to know that our car can be. It's not a big deal. So sort of off the street parking. A plus would have been a garage, and so you'll hear that as we kind of go through it. Other than that, I'm trying to think. We wanted the house to look like New Orleans, not a new home. We wanted something. It was okay if something was going to have to be remodeled because we knew we weren't going to live it out on day one. It was going to let's take our time and sort of walk through it, and we can make it our own and put sort of our own stamp on it, but still carry that New Orleans feel.
And going back to what Babu was talking about in terms of the location and the flooding and whatnot, when we looked at the map, it had to be in what's known as the X flood zone, which is where you're you're in an area that has minimal to no flooding. And so that was definitely a criteria. I personally was so eager. I was like, let's just buy what we like, and I wasn't really, I mean, I thought about the flooding issue and whatnot, but we saw some really nice homes. And I was like, well, let's just get it. Let's just go for that one. And Babu was adamant that it had to be in that X flood zone. And I'm grateful to him for that because unfortunately, so many people, especially during Katrina, have had to go through a lot. My family went through a lot during that time and lost everything. So we definitely didn't want to put ourselves through that. So,
Yeah. I mean, and adding on that, the other part was that we wanted it walkable. We don't want to be stuck in the house. We wanted to be able to walk the neighborhood in the afternoons or in the evening, whenever. And sort of it feels like a home. Because New Orleans has pockets. So you just have to know, when you're there a while and a long time, you kind of know where some of these pockets are, where you want to be. That's sort of the approach we took. So with that, we can go through. We went through, I don't know how many homes, probably about 7 or 8.
at least, yeah. And just to let you know, this was during COVID. So we actually didn't walk through the homes. We never set foot in any of these homes until we got to the one that we actually bought. And that was the day of signing. So with our realtor, who was great, we did Zoom. We did,
Oh, it was like Zoom.
was like Zoom. We did FaceTime with him. And that was actually fun and interesting all at once. But yeah, we never set foot in any of these homes.
Yeah,
We did it remote.
yeah. Before this, if you had said, "Hey, you're going to buy a house," sort of not fully sight unseen, but sort of the size of the investment, I would have said that's crazy. There's no way. But we've bought enough homes in our own personal life that I felt like we had a good take for what to look for and what questions to ask. And so, to BB's point, when we kind of went through this, it was like, all right, how are we going to see these homes? We can't go there. We know what we want. And we actually went through a couple different realtors at the time to try to find which one felt good for us and then the homes that we were looking at. And then we walk it with them, and we'd ask all the basic questions you would normally ask. And then as they're walking it, we would have them stop with the camera, zoom into certain things that we questioned just to make sure. And then we would give them a list of questions afterwards to go ask the owners themselves, or their realtor, to find out so we could get a little more. But it was a little unnerving. And it kind of, especially when you get into negotiations, it gets even harder because there is no facial emotions that you engage with that you can in the real world, when you're buying in the normal process of buying a home. So I think that proved even harder. And then all the way up to the point of us driving up and then finally seeing it and going, what did we buy? Because we're not going to know until we walk in, but it was an interesting process.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first home that we looked at, walked through, well, FaceTime with, was actually not with our realtor that we went with, but it's actually on the same street that we ended up purchasing our home. And it was a nice big, well, I'm saying nice, but it was a big house, but it actually, it needed a lot of work, and it's right next to a restaurant. And so that did not work for us. But the issue was that they didn't want to come down on the price. I know it was not appraised for what we needed it to appraise for. And so we had to pass on that one. And we were really bummed because that was literally the first home we took a look at. But like I said, we still ended up on that same street. So,
but yeah, I guess the other thing I'll say that, with each one of these homes we went through, we sort of took the house, laid out the floor plan, which is kind of what you'll see as we're going through this. But we went through the floor plan and literally redrew how we would do, make the mods and talk through it. And I think that excitement carried into the realtor, which then carried into the owners. And when the owners, they like their home, as they should. And I think as they got to get that feel that, hey, these guys are going to, not remodel, but bring back to life their home, it invigorated them. And that's sort of what drove them to, we don't think we're going to sell now. And it didn't matter. And it worked out for us because, the more that we realized it later, even after we bought ours and saw and things we discovered, it was sort of a blessing in disguise for us.
It really was. It really was. Yeah. And so this next home, it was actually a duplex. It was the second home we saw. It had a nice sized yard on the side of the house. Babu worked his magic with his PowerPoint presentation and laid it out the way we would want it to look for our needs, but it just didn't pan out. It was too small, and it's I think what they consider a double, so two shotguns connected. And so just trying to fit everything that we needed into it and have a lot of space. And I know a lot of homes in New Orleans are doubles and people make it work. They turn it into a single family home and it looks great. It just didn't work for us. But it was nice and semi move-in ready. Of course, we wanted to make a lot of changes, needed to make a lot of changes. I personally, thinking back, I wanted to actually live on one side, rent out the other. Babu was not for that, and that's fine, but that's what I kind of would have done with it.
Yeah, the other thing about it, I think it had an open lot on one side of it. So that
was the yard.
Yeah, it was the yard. It was a big yard. And they had put the amenities on, I shouldn't say amenities, but the generator and the air conditioning on top of the house because of flooding. Not that it had flooded, but they wanted to take precautions. And but all in all, it was a nice, simple house. The thing that worried me was I felt like the construction was not as robust as some of the others that we will talk about or had seen. And I think that one I can't remember other than did we walk away or did we actually
we walked away.
Is that what we did? Okay. I think they asked for a best and final at that point, and then I think we walked away.
Yeah.
And then because these others started to pop up. There's another house I was actually going to bring up after this that I noticed is not on here. There was one that we did look at which was I think it was a Creo design house. Because I just realized it's not on here, and it would have happened right after this.
Oh,
But it was made in, oh wow, 1700s, and I loved the architecture. It was phenomenal.
was this the one in the French Quarter?
Yeah, it was near the restaurant.
Okay. I thought that was this one.
No,
Oh,
that is also a double,
oh,
the
okay.
one we just talked about.
Okay.
And but this one was another double. The difference was it was in the French Quarter, but it shared yard with the, not that you had to share the yard, but it butted up to a restaurant. And restaurants in general to me are just a lot of people, and then you got to deal with rats and anything else, and I just didn't want any of that. But the house was, to me, like a 1700-year-old home, and it looked phenomenal. I mean, from a maintaining perspective, but that one I really enjoyed. It was had a Creo design, which is, if you don't know, when you look at the house, the roof line actually comes towards you, and you can see the chimneys out the top, versus an apex that sort of sits like this facing you. And you can see it when you see them after a while, you'll know that's a Creo design, or a Creo house, if you will.
Yeah, and you mentioned it was in the French Quarter.
It was in the French Quarter.
Yeah, and part of why we didn't go with it was because it was too small, and being next to the restaurant, and I can't stand rats and roaches. But also just because initially I actually wanted a home in the French Quarter, and then Babu and I talked about it and figured we'd come to the chaos. It's like, rather than bring the chaos to us, basically saying that to live, it wasn't on Bourbon Street, but it was in the French Quarter with the hustle and bustle. So we wanted to be outside of that, and so we can travel and get there, no problem.
Yeah.
But to live there and have the noise and whatnot, it just wasn't going to work
And
for
the
our
smells.
lifestyle.
Well, that's the other problem, the smells, because you get not the restaurant smell, but in the quarters, you get, there's
Drunk people.
There's urine, and you get that smell, and they clean it, but it's just, it's not something I wanted to have day in and day out, especially as something we're going to go hang out at.
Yeah. And it could have been a place that we rented out. I think we would have made a killing off of it.
No, it was a great home. There was nothing wrong with
and
it.
it was really nice. But then again, at the same time, we wanted a place that we can come back to with our family and friends and enjoy. And there's just something about using a home as an Airbnb. Other people have stayed in it, and then you come in and you bring your family, and it's like, who was sleeping in my bed?
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, we didn't want that. So
let's see, the next house. Oh, there you go. Okay, I'll let you go ahead and start.
no, so this home, it wasn't in the French Quarter, but it definitely was quintessential New Orleans. It had the brick sidewalk, really pretty home, and that didn't pan out because we offered,
I think they wanted more.
Yeah, we offered what we thought was a
fair value.
Yeah, fair market value price for the home, and they came back and they're like, no, we want what we want. And that's understandable, because I would want more, or at least what I asked for, and we just didn't have it.
Well, and New Orleans is tricky because you get into the appraisal aspect of it, and even though they may want what they want and you're going to put a lot down, but even then the banks may say, no, I'm not going to, it's just not valued at that. And trying to find a lender and everything else, it gets complicated. And so on that case, I do remember that, because it had a pool, and it had an interior architecture is what they did, because the owners had an Italian background. So they did an Italian interior, I guess, updates. A couple weird rooms that didn't fit right, but
and one room didn't have a closet, so it's technically not a bedroom. So I believe it was probably like a 3-bed, 2-bath, but technically without that closet space, it was only a 2-bed, 2-bath.
Right.
And for the price that they wanted, it wouldn't have appraised at that.
But it was nice walking distance from everything, and really quiet.
I think did you say it had a pool?
It did have a pool.
It had a pool.
It just did not have any access. It had a driveway, but I think you said they bricked it in.
Yeah.
So it was part of the sidewalk, and which looked nice, but that's really I didn't care for that, because I want to be able to get the car off the street and not feel like I can't find a spot and I got to go park around the block.
Yeah, actually the space was a green space. So you'd have to tear out all the foliage to create your own driveway, which is fine, but there were other things we needed to do. And so just, it didn't work out. So,
Let's see here. The next house. So this one, I'll let you, I know you're excited.
oh, go ahead. I'm excited about the
Oh,
next one.
okay. So this house was, it's not too far from a restaurant. And I know you keep hearing the word restaurant a lot because New Orleans, there's restaurants everywhere.
It's all about the food. You know that
Yeah.
the food and the music. Anybody who knows anything about New Orleans. So these homes are near restaurants.
Right. So this one actually, it was actually built by a guy who built the house next to it as well. He bought two homes. He remodeled both. He stayed in one and sold off the other. And I think now finally he sold his. But they were completely redone. I mean, down to the stud, gorgeous homes inside. They did, I mean, not just the wall molding, the crown molding, the baseboards, but also they put in the I can't think of the term right
Recessed
now.
lighting.
No, the molding that goes in the ceiling.
Oh
I can't
gosh,
think of the term right
I
now. But that's
know.
okay. But anyway, they put in that everywhere. It was really gorgeous, and it was light, very bright in the house, and everything was redone. Backyard was great. The one downfall in all of it, the color scheme was great, but no parking. It's the same. Now his house he built, there was a driveway, which was great. This one, you could not. It wasn't like there was a space to be able to get a car in. It was literally capped off just because of how the fences were set. It was never meant to have street parking. So we were close to pulling the trigger on that one.
Yes.
And then we sort of, because we were teetering between that and the next house you're going to talk about, we sort of just let it go because someone else had stepped in, and our realtor actually was the realtor on that house, the one we were just talking about. And so we sort of just backed out of it and said, let them have it. We'll go work this other one. And because that was really our favorite that was coming up here
Yeah.
that I'll let you talk about. Is there anything else you want to say about this house?
No, it was gorgeous, and that's about it.
Okay.
I liked it.
But it was off of me, it was in the neighborhood. It was quiet.
It was in that X flood zone.
Yeah.
So
Very walkable.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So yes, this one was my ultimate favorite. This one was love at first sight for Babu and I. And I mean, it had everything except the garage, which if Babu can pass up on a garage, like you have a winner. So it had one space for a car, and the house. I mean, look at it. You're gonna see the picture.
It's somewhere in here. It's
Yeah,
gonna pop up.
yeah, it's gonna pop up here. It was just so cute and everything done. It had a nice backyard. There was a porch swing in the back and not in the front.
No, it was in
But
the. Oh, no,
it was
there's
in
a swing in the front, but the back had that
had the
the
bed.
bed. It was a queen bed swing.
Yes, yes. Everything was done. Like you just move right in and just be in. We were so bummed. So I told Babu, I was like, we could. So as you've heard, we've been offering what we felt was fair market value. And our realtors were like, yeah, those are fair prices. And of course, people wanted more. For this one, I told Babu, let's break the bank a little for this one.
Yeah.
We have to go over. And we did. And still, we still did not get that house.
Well, the problem is the way they do their bidding. It's everyone puts in an offer, and then they come back and they don't tell you what it is, and they just say, okay, now everyone give a best and final. Okay, and I don't. Even if you had millions of dollars sitting there ready to go, you could still miss out. And that's basically what happened. We put in a bid, and I think when we finally found out, we were off by $5,000.
$5,000.
And I was like, we would have paid 10.
Yeah.
But to me, I almost felt like they should have come back and said, hey, here's the top price, almost like an auctioning. Anyone want to go over? And then, they would have got a better price for it.
Yeah.
But they sold it. I think they ended up renting it out later, whoever they rented it to.
Yeah, it's actually they bought it and they're renting it.
Yeah.
Like it's we loved it and we were very bummed.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
yeah.
the trees were gorgeous, and the street,
Yeah.
the walk on was gorgeous.
Yeah.
And but I will say this way, there was, I think, things we learned and liked from it that we're trying to make sure ours has some of those appeals.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's that was the peak for us of, okay, there's got to be even better than this, because every one of them has been getting better and better that we found. Which then leads us to
last but not least.
Yeah.
Our own home that you see right here, well, that you saw in the intro, and that we're going to pop up here and walk you through soon. But yeah, so this home, while not perfect in the aesthetics, it's perfect for us. It's it's in the X flood zone. It's got the double porches. It's got Babu's driveway and his garage. So there's plenty of yard. We have a couple of dogs. You saw our one dog in the intro, and there's plenty of space for them, plenty of space in the home itself.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about this one, it was a little more open in terms of how it was the layout was. And the other one, the one previous to this that we were just talking about, you sort of have to walk down the side to get into the house. Where this one, there's a grand entrance. It's kind of nice. You get to see it, as you're coming in from the street. And it's a much larger lot, right? So you have a lot more access to doing things, to the point of the not just the driveway, but a very large 2-car garage. That's huge. And then I don't know, I felt like it had a lot more offering for us to be able to manipulate and make changes. And the interior, I think the way they had it set up before, it was a rental.
Yes.
He lived in one floor and they rented out another floor. That's sort of how it was set up. And I think it had been that way for years, because the original owner, when it was built, it was one entire home for them. And then I think it must have been in the 60s or something like that. They split the home. And then at that point they were, trying to create income back then. And you can see it as we'll go through. We've opened up the walls. You can see what's original, what was done in the 60s and what was done in the 80s. And so our intent is we're going to strip it all, take it all back to the original. And then, there'll be some tweaks to it just because there's stuff that exists today.
Right.
Because actually in this house at the top, in the attic, and we'll take pictures and show you, there was a water cistern. So they collected the rainwater. That's how they got water in the house. And it's still, the cistern's still, it's not connected, but it's in the house and you can see it. And it's sort of impressive because I guess, sort of digging, we found out, I guess back in the 1920s or 30s, when they were putting in plumbing into New Orleans, they sort of mandated you can't use those cisterns anymore. So that way they could force people to get on city water and sewer. But it's things like that you sort of find as you're going through. And I don't know, we really like it.
Yeah.
It's walkable, it's close to things.
Yeah. And it's actually where we want it to be. So, like rewinding back to the first home that I said, it was the older people home, blah, blah, blah. That was the street that we wanted to be on. And here we are. We are on the street. So that Babu said, it was a blessing in disguise that we didn't get that one, but we did get one that we like. In our opinion, is much better. I mean, we need to do a lot of work, as you'll see, but we can make it our own. We can bring you guys on the journey. So it's just perfect.
Yeah. So I think all in all, I think we've shown you a little bit of the images we're going through. You're going to see a lot of these videos. And then what we'll do in the next episodes coming up, we're going to walk you through the layout of the house. We'll walk you through what we're thinking architecturally, different options we looked at and where we settled in. And that's sort of what we're working next. And then we'll take you into some of the construction phases that we're getting started up here or have been doing.
Yeah. And we welcome your opinion. And Babu is going to show you his PowerPoint presentation, and it'll show you how we've gone through various variations of what we want, what we think we want in the home. And so if you think, oh, I like that one, slide whatever it was, let us know, or let us know how you think you would lay out the room, because we're still playing with that. So yeah. But we'd love to get your constructive criticism. So Thank you guys for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And we'll be back with episode 3.
Okay.